Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is boom, and this verb was suggested by the viewer Abdi. Abdi, thank you so much for this suggestion. Now let's spend a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we can use this verb. The first way you might encounter the verb boom can mean to make a loud, deep, resonant sound. I want you to imagine kind of a lower tone, not something high-pitched, but rather low. So this could be two objects colliding or making contact with each other. Could come from something falling to the ground. Really kind of unlimited ways to produce this kind of sound. Now, a second way you might encounter this verb can mean to say something in a loud and deep, resonant voice. Now, I'm sure my students describe me in a number of different ways, but I'm fairly confident I have not been described as booming at them. My voice just isn't that low or that loud. But a third way you might encounter the verb boom can mean to experience a sudden and rapid growth and or expansion. This is going to most commonly be used in connection to businesses or as someone developing products or offering services. And usually that rapid growth is also going to come with an increase in prices. So you might think about what happened at various points in the past here in the United States where I live during the pandemic. Many people were wanting to buy new houses, or they wanted to buy them in less condensed urban areas. So people were saying the housing market is booming. Lots of people want to buy, and the prices are going up. Related to our third definition is the fourth one here, to develop rapidly in population or importance. So sometimes as various areas or regions become popular and more people migrate or want to move to those areas, again, we might hear that description of like, this area is booming. Just more and more people are populating it. Related to that, our fifth definition here, to increase greatly in size or number. Again, all really definitions 3, 4, and 5 are all connected there in connection to rapid growth increases in size. Now, a sixth and different way we could use this verb boom can mean to either kick or hit something with great force. You might encounter this verb being used in connection with sports, and particularly if the sport involves kicking or hitting something with a lot of power. Okay? For now, you should know that boom is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms booming. The past tense and the participle form of our verb can be made by adding ed. Now, the base verb, boom, ends in a voiced m sound. This means when I add the ed ending, I'm just going to make a duh or a d sound. I'm not going to add an extra syllable when I say it. So I'm not making an id sound, I'm just making duh. So the past tense and the participle form of the verb should sound like this. Boomed, boomed. Okay. Now there is a phrasal verb you might encounter as you're reading or listening to others, and that is to boom out. The first way you could use this phrasal verb ties back to our first definition, producing a loud sound that sort of bursts forth. So it might be a bit of a surprise, not something we were anticipating. An example of this, their stereo boomed out until 1 a.m. Right? So we can maybe imagine some loud sounds, maybe that deep sort of bass sound to it, kind of thumping. Now, a second way you might hear boom out used can mean to speak either loudly or forcefully. Again, this goes back to our second definition of the verb, and I have an example here of someone maybe we can picture speaking in that loud and forceful way. So the example sentence says, "The drill sergeant boomed out commands." So here we're talking about a professional in the military, and maybe we can imagine this is someone who can speak in a rather deep, low tone and sort of command others to follow certain rules, do certain things, and generally it's not a rather light, friendly tone that's communicating those particular wishes. Now, before we move on to doing just a little bit of sentence practice and verb tense practice, I want to talk to you for just a moment about how we form WH questions, or what I like to call our more information questions. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you might get a little tired of me talking about how we make yes and yes or no questions in our various verb tenses. But every now and again, I like for us to stop and just think about these other forms of questions. The questions we're going to practice today cannot be simply answered with yes or no. Right? We're going to have to give the person asking that question some additional information. But the nice thing is we have a general pattern to follow as we make questions in this way. Today we're going to focus on questions in the simple past tense. And our general structure is to start with a question word. We're going to use the past form of our helping verb do, which is did. Then we're going to have a subject, and then we're going to have a base verb. So notice I'm not using the ed form of the verb or the irregular form in this particular style of question. If you'd like, you're welcome to pause the video here. You can spend a moment sort of picking a word from each column to form a question. Sometimes there are additional words following that base verb, but there doesn't have to be to have a grammatical sentence. Okay? But with this in mind, let's make some more information questions with our verb of the day, boom. We're going to start today with questions about time. For that, we'll be using the question word when, W-H-E-N. And when I say time, I am referring to both time on a clock or time as in a date. Okay? So this question word will work in both situations. So an example of this question in the simple past tense with our verb of the day might be, when did your business boom? So maybe we have somebody who's retiring and they're kind of reflecting on when things were good, right? That's sort of when we're asking when were your profits increasing? When was your business maybe the most successful out of your long career? Another kind of question we can ask is a question about the manner in which something occurs. For that, we'll use the question word how, H-O-W. But then our pattern will follow the same. So an example of this, how did the machine boom so forcefully? Right? We kind of want to know, how was it able to make that deep, resonant sound? Another common question is to understand the reason that something happened. For that, we use the question word why, W-H-Y. Here's another example. Why did the population boom in the 1950s? Right? So here we're talking about that increase. Finally, we can ask questions about things. Some textbooks and other teachers might call these determiners. One way to use a determiner is the question word what, W-H-A-T. What did you boom from the living room this morning? Right? So here maybe we're talking about that loud sound. Was it a TV? Was it maybe a video from your phone, a stereo or something, right? But maybe we could hear some loud noise and we want to know the source of that loud noise. Now, there are a couple questions that break our pattern. There's another kind of determiner or a question word that will let us ask about a particular thing. It's the question word which. W-H-I-C-H. What makes this a little bit different is we're always going to have a noun following this. So which, right? And we're going to have something here because essentially we're allowing a person to make a choice from either two things or a group of things. So an example of that. Which device boomed just a second ago? Here we're really asking a question about the subject. That's why you see that ed form there. So we want to know what caused that particular loud sound. The last type of question that, again, does not follow our exact pattern here is a question about a person. So we, again, are asking sort of who is responsible for an action. For that, we use our question word who. And you'll notice, again, we're not using did here because who is both our question word and it's the subject. So an example of this might be, who boomed that last punt? We might hear that word used in American football. Again, it goes back to that sixth definition about kicking something with great force. And we want, again, this is a question about who was responsible for doing that action. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb boom. And the first word we're going to discuss is just the noun form of this word. The noun boom has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. Like our verb, the noun can have a number of different meanings. We're going to talk about 4 of them today. The first way you might encounter the noun boom can again refer to this loud, deep, resonant sound. Maybe you'd hear or have heard someone ask, did you hear that boom? Right? So they're asking, did you hear that loud, deep sound? Now, the noun can also refer to some type of rapid expansion or a rapid increase in something. So, an example of this, has the housing boom slowed at all? Now, our third definition isn't going to sound like something we have talked about yet, but the noun boom can refer to a part of a sail or a part of a ship or boat. So it's a long spar that extends the foot of the sail. It kind of holds it in place. I've got a picture in the bottom corner of my screen, and I'm going to kind of run my highlighter here over the boom. That's what is extending the bottom or foot of the sail. So an example of this in a sentence, you're going to notice I'm not a sailor here, so I don't know that I have a great one here, but it says, the forward end of the boom attaches to a mast just below the sail. Now here maybe someone is educating another person about what that is and how it works or its function. Now, a fourth way you might encounter the verb boom is in connection to the environment. It is a type of temporary floating barrier, and it's most commonly used to contain oil spills, so to keep the oil from seeping further out into bodies of water, particularly the ocean. So an example of this might be, the worker is carrying a bag holding a containment boom used to soak up spilled oil. So again, not something you might hear every day, but if that's an area you're either studying or working in, it might be a little more common to encounter it. Now, let's talk about another related word. Maybe you've heard this one. Kind of was, I would say, trending just a little while ago, but it's the noun boomer. This is slang for baby boomer, which is referring to a person who was born in the years following World War II. So think late 1940s, 1950s, I think even into the early 60s there. And during that period of time, there was a large increase in the birth rate. in the United States and in other countries as well. I think there might have been a feeling of hope, like things were going to be better upon the conclusion of that World War. However, now sometimes this just gets shortened. Instead of saying an individual is a baby boomer and that they are a boomer, and sometimes it's said a little derogatorily as well, to kind of say like, you're old. Okay? So, but a not so negative way to use it might be in a sentence like this: the safety net is disappearing for boomers. I've seen sentences very similar to this, talking about Social Security, which is a United States government program to provide kind of a consistent income to someone who has reached either their retirement years, or maybe they have become disabled, something of that nature. So there are lots of rules, and that's a much longer video. So, but if you encounter boomer, now you'll know who that's referring to. One more noun for us today. Maybe you've heard of a boom town. This is generally describing an area or town that's experiencing that sudden growth. And it could be growth in population, it could be growth in business, it could be both of those things. So an example of this in a sentence could be, what's the latest biotech boom town? So there are different areas that seem to attract different kinds of businesses. And so this question is sort of wanting to know as it relates to biotechnology, kind of like, what's that hot area where companies are springing up and maybe the population is rapidly growing because the businesses are growing in that same area. Thanks again to Abdi for suggesting today's verb. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.